Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, David here, and welcome back to another video. This one is going to be about Meptaohr, ReFantazio, because if you didn't know, a lot of people, a lot of journalists, but also just fans like you and I have been able to get their hands on and play Meptaohr, ReFantazio, both in like mid-June and also early July at Summer Games Fest and also at Anime Expo. It was a demo, very early stuff, so no spoilers here, far from it, but I have 4 previews that I pointed out, that I chose, that I think are going to be very excited for us to look at to get a good idea of what exactly is Meptaohr ReFantazio and what does people think about it, because it is set to release in 3 months, believe it or not, in October, and I'm insanely excited for it. So if you're new to the channel, you'd like to stay up to date on all things when it comes to RPGs, Atlus, and more, make sure to subscribe, ring that notification bell, and if you enjoyed today's video, a thumbs up is a big help. Now let's get right into it. So the first preview that I want us to look at is on Polygon. All my previews that we are looking at today are linked in the description. I'm going to go over some of the parts that I think are interesting in these previews. I'm going to give my opinion on that as well. And then if you want to read more, click the links in the description. Meptaohr ReFantazio is setting high stakes for itself, a familiar step in a bold new direction. Meptaohr ReFantazio's developers are not being subtle about the themes they're seeking to tackle in this game. The upcoming RPG takes place in a medieval setting that is mirror to our contemporary world, the world within a world of depiction of a utopia, illustrated as a modern city during a cutscene is considered an anomaly. The game's characters read about it in a book in which it's told that no soul is born into discrimination and all lives are equal. It really does sound like a fantasy. During a hands-on demo at Summer Games Fest 2024, I played 3 different sections of Atlus's upcoming RPG, totaling about an hour of playtime. The first was set early in the game before the protagonist summons his power, acting as a tutorial of sorts that introduced the story and some of the key design standouts when compared to Persona. For one, the protagonist is voiced. This might sound like a small detail, but compared to previous Atlus games that often add more of a self-insert hero, the voice acting adds authority and a more specific sense of personality to the choices you make during conversations. So choices during dialogues, that's cool. Now, I do not want wordless dialogue choices and dialogue options. I want them to be impactful and to change stuff in the story. So let's keep going here and see how it goes. From my time with the game, it seems not every single dialogue bit is fully voiced, but rather the ones that occur during main story related sections as well as convos with key characters, which is fair. Again, with these long RPGs, common practice, right? Especially for Atlus. If you do a side quest in a Persona game, you're probably not gonna get voice acting, but if you are in some sort of important scene, well, definitely it's going to be voiced. At other times, such as when taking on activities with companions similar to hanging out with your fellow students to increase your social links, the protagonist said a few phrases instead, like Joker from Persona 5 does when performing certain actions. And then the writer says if you've played Persona before, you'll be able to hit the ground running. The structure of the story is another outlier. You're essentially going on a road trip with recruiting people and taking on requests. There are main objectives that serve as deadlines, but aside from that, you're free to explore and spend time as you see fit. The demo offered a glimpse of this in the second section as I traveled to a dungeon in search of a missing person. The overworld map is beautifully drawn as indicators for the time of day and weather conditions as well. So see, this is a little something that got people worried a little bit because clearly the structure of the story is Persona. There's a calendar system, you have a deadline to reach a certain goal, and then once you beat that goal, you're gonna have free time to do activities, speak with companions and everything, and then boom, something else happens. You have another deadline to meet, save a certain person, explore a certain place, and reach a certain goal before the deadline. So it's gonna be the same kind of structure here, which again is a good thing because we love the structure, but at the same time I kind of wish Atlus went a little more in a direction that is different from Persona. But let's keep going here. Again, if you've played Persona before, you'll be able to hit the ground running in this game. As I explored the dungeon, however, I witnessed some standout features that shake up the usual process of trying to get an advantage attack on enemies to initiate in combat. In Meptaohr ReFantazio, there are multiple ways to do this. If you spot a stronger enemy, you can perform multiple real-time attacks to weaken them before diving into a classic turn-based encounter. Don't expect full-on hack and slash gameplay, though, as the protagonist can only do a few sets of attacks, but these did feel satisfactory each time. So see, this gets me excited. This is different, and Lord knows how much I hate let's say in older Persona games, even in Persona 5, how you strike an enemy in a dungeon, it's clunky, it's not really accurate. I just don't like it, especially if you go back to older entries like a Persona 4 Golden. But even in Reload, I thought this was a little crusty. So to have something more dynamic and more engaging is a good, but you still keep the turn-based combat system intact, and to me that is a good. As I recall my time with the demo, there's a long list of reasons to be excited about Meptaohr. The enemy designs, the potential around archetypes, all the subtle refinements to systems that have been in iterations for decades across the Shin Megami Tensei universe at large, all feel like both a culmination of ideas and an all hands-on deck approach to create a new series. But I keep coming back to the story themes and their potential to showcase whether or not this group of veteran developers has reflected on the legacy they've built over the years with their team at large. So clearly this first writer here, Diego at Polygon, liked his experience with Meptaohr. Now this one is very interesting because this is coming from someone who has not played Persona, or at least who isn't interested in Persona. This article is from Zachary at Windows Central. I've never been interested in Persona, but after playing Meptaohr ReFantazio, I'm actually excited for Atlus's next game. I've not entirely neglected the massive, diverse, and decades-old JRPG genre of video games, as I greatly enjoyed titles like Chain Echoes and Scarlet Nexus. However, Persona simply hasn't landed on my radar as a series I'd be interested in, and nothing I've seen or heard has really convinced me otherwise. On top of that, only a limited number of the Windows Central team had the privilege of heading to Los Angeles for SGF 2024, and none of us held any excitement for Meptaohr ReFantazio. That's tough, mate. So when an offer came in to go hands-on with the upcoming Atlus project, I agreed to go only because my schedule was the most accommodating for the preview, and I was not expecting much. Now I'm keeping my eye on Meptaohr ReFantazio and its late 2024 release, thanks to an hour of hands-on time that introduced me to the game's world, exploration, and combat. My hour-long hands-on demo was split into 3 parts: a story-focused prologue, an exploration and combat-heavy dungeon, and a late-game boss fight. I didn't quite have time to fully explore the final section, but I learned something new from each part. For one, I was given the opportunity to begin learning about this gorgeous, detailed, fantastical world. The death of a king has thrown the world into turmoil with the release of a mysterious magic setting into motion, a bloody tournament that will determine the fate of everyone. What interests me the most, however, is the premise that only you can unlock the latent powers hidden inside the companions and allies you make during your journey, increasing your strength as you take on hidden foes along your quest to save the world from chaos. You play as a character that discovers the secret of archetypes and is capable of drawing out this incredibly powerful magic from the people around you. I can't say that the overarching story of Meptaohr ReFantazio particularly excites me, but this focus on social features directly influencing your success does. During your time in Meptaohr, you'll need to converse and steadily become closer with your companions in order to become more powerful, and you'll need that power to lift a terrible curse and hopefully survive the tournament embroiling the United Kingdom of Uchronia. Combat-wise, Meptaohr ReFantazio seems to be an evolution of what came before in Persona and other turn-based JRPGs. You'll have to carefully manage party members, abilities, and items as you exploit enemy weaknesses and defend your own. But there are some interesting elements here. For one, progressing through the game means unlocking and increasing the strength of your archetypes, giving you access to powerful and unique abilities. On top of that, you have to manage your party's turns each round of combat and can sacrifice those turns to pull off combined team moves known as synergies that can turn the tide of battle if used carefully. I wasn't completely sold on the value of exploration in the limited dungeon I had access to, and I'm still curious what secrets the world of Meptaohr may hold, but the combat was at least a blast. Cleverly, you can dispatch weaker enemies you've leveled beyond with simple in-world attacks, only needing to go into the more in-depth turn-based battles to take on stronger foes. This is an element that most people who played the game really liked, and I'm very excited for it as well. So interesting preview here from Windows Central. Overall, not too excited about the game itself, but this person liked what they played, and that's coming from someone who isn't a fan of both SMT and Persona. Now let's look at this one here from Justin Wood, which is from CG Mag Online, and this one is from a fan of Atlus. As a devoted fan of the Shin Megami Tensei series and its spin-offs, mainly the Devil Summoner and Persona spin-offs, the new trailer for Meptaohr ReFantazio at the Summer Games Fest was a thrilling moment that was one of my favorites. The game's trailer hinted at a departure from the traditional SMT style, leaning more towards the Devil Summoner Raido Kuzunoha series. In fact, it looked like a unique blend of Persona, SMT, and Devil Summoner, which is basically the development cast for this game, right? Creating a distinct and intriguing gaming experience that I cannot wait to delve into. I do want to talk about the final section of the preview that they were able to play here, saying the final section of the demo was the boss battle scenario, which had us at around level 30 going up against some form of sea monster man. This was an incredibly tough battle with the boss dealing with multiple attacks, status effects, and regenerating sections. Being a fan of JRPGs, it was something that fans of the genre can deal with, having to switch tactics on the fly and at times needed to keep the party healed, which dealing out minimal damage just to keep that health bar dropping. It's a good look at how strategic player will have to be during the later game. Once again, the soundtrack is intense, but at the same time a bop. Meptaohr ReFantazio was easily my favorite thing I got to go hands-on with during SGF, and the wait to get my hands on the full game is going to be excruciating. It was an incredible peek at what Atlus is working on and the next evolution of their JRPG trappings. Needless to say that it feels right up my alley, and if you are a Persona fan, Shin Megami Tensei or Devil Summoner fan and you aren't excited, now is the time to change your tune. Meptaohr ReFantazio is going to be incredible. And now, clearly here, Justin is onto something. Most people who are fans of the genre, I think it's going to be fair to say that it's going to be a perfectly fine and very good game overall that is going to be probably some sort of game of the year contender for these people. I know it's going to be for myself, and this is what the game is drawing. They're drawing RPG fans toward the game, but they need something to grab onto newer fans as well. And this final preview here from Digital Trends is going to be exciting to look at. As an adventure that will likely last upwards of 100 of hours, I wasn't able to glean more than that. I did get a good feel for the gameplay though. Dungeons made their grand return here and feel a bit more expensive and interact than what's typically in Atlus RPGs. Players can actually attack enemies and deal some damage before even entering a fight. If the enemies are weak enough, battles can be avoided altogether. Rather than have players recruit demons or create personas, Meptaohr ReFantazio has a job system that you would find in a game like Bravely Default. These archetypes have names like Warrior, Seeker, and Masked Dancer, and they come with passive buffs and abilities. For example, the Seeker is a very support-oriented archetype. On top of that, there are very powerful synthesis attacks that use a lot of turn actions. Those are the combo attacks that we talked about before. Once I got my head around this system, I found that Meptaohr ReFantazio is actually a pretty familiar feeling RPG, albeit with a lot of visual flair inspired by anime and European architecture. It won't do anything to win genre haters over, but the gameplay system sang as I entered the final part of my demo, a spectacular boss fight on the Gauntlet Runner that serves as player that serves as the player mobile base of operation. Considering that the Gauntlet Runner will also be home to this game's version of social links which improve various virtues of the main character, Persona fans should find a lot of familiarity here as well. It's great to see the creators of Persona finally get their chance at a new IP. So reading all 4 of these previews here and giving you guys some of the highlights here, I think those previews are they're not hitting as much as I was hoping that they would, simply because it was a restricted part of the game that Atlus showed, and of course the game is still 3 months away, so we're going to get more and more info as we progress up until launch. And of course, Atlus is still going to show us those showcases and give us new trailers and everything. And honestly, you guys, the more I see of this game as a huge RPG fan, as a huge Atlus fan, I know it's going to be right up my alley. I just hope Atlus keeps pushing the game and keeps pushing marketing for it to sell the game to other fans. It's a new IP. It's a fresh start for Atlus. Now's the time to get new fans in and get them ready for an SMT 6 or a Persona 6 or a Meptaohr ReFantazio 2 at some point in the future. Or maybe Atlus just moves on and Studio Zero just moves on to another new IP afterwards. Who knows? But what do you guys think of the previews that we looked at today? I'm very excited for the game. I cannot be more excited for it. It is by far my most anticipated game of the year, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more about it. Thank you all so much for watching. You have a great day. Bye.